There. Slowly come to an end. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your break. I don't know what you did. I know what I did. Doesn't matter. Okay, so first, as usual, so we will have a featured reader, DC Reid, over there in a few minutes because we have had for a while now, I think it's very successful, this thing of a poetic opener. Our poetic opener tonight is the person who's standing next to me here, Chris Bullock. Chris Bullock reads his poems. Yeah, give him applause. Chris Bullock, it says in this bio I have, he reads his poems to his hiking buddies around campfires in the Utah wilderness, but also to us, apparently, in Victoria. His poetry collection, How the Light Gets In, was published in November 2023. That's just 3 months ago, and explores moments of revelation in ordinary experiences from deserts to grandchildren. I like that. And he will sell this book here tonight for $10, and he's going to read a little from it to us. Thank you very much for that, Chris. Take it away.
Yes, that's definitely cheaper than $1 a line as well. So you're getting a deal. Can you hear me, by the way? Okay. If you ever can't, just raise your hand and I'll talk louder. So, I was bumping along, publishing a poem now and again, very, very occasionally. Suddenly I realized I'm going to die and I want to publish it. I want to finish my book. I want to put my poems out. And so suddenly, about a year ago, I got galvanized. The whispers of mortality became shouts. I thought, I've got to get this damn book out. So this is the product of choosing 50 from among a whole watch of poems. And I discovered when I'd chosen them that just seemingly accidentally, but they all had this idea of epiphany or revelation, where you learn something you didn't know. And that turned out to be a kind of theme. Um, so I do a lot of hiking in the Utah, as Torsten has mentioned already. And for some reason, I find it very poetic. But, Victoria's wet and everything grows out of everything else. And the desert is clear, precise, and dry. And I like it, I feel like dried out. So two of these poems have a relation to the desert setting. The first one, called Ode to a Burnt Stick, if I can find it, 59. So my British culture doesn't teach much about praise. Praise is not dominant if you have a British cultural experience. So to counteract that, I actually like writing praise poems, odes, and this is one to a burnt stick. You became a stick in Comb Wash, Utah. Before that, you were just one slender willow trunk among many, just one of the tribe. Then you were chosen and whittled by Ray Rasmussen, one of several sticks, most tamarisk, you the only willow. You were brought down to natural bridges and chosen to be the stick that poked the campfire. I can imagine your unhappiness, all the other sticks chosen for hiking, and you, the odd stick out, never leaving camp, being called upon only to suffer, to be burned with no one noticing your wounds. But then you offered to me, and I noticed your lightness and hidden elegance, notice how the fire had hardened your foot, made it firm and untrustworthy on Utah sandstone. And I could draw stick figures, black on Utah red rock with you. You were a great 5-foot-long carbon pencil. And so I celebrate you, my burnt, trustworthy stick, and also celebrate the wounds that sometimes destroy us, but sometimes give us the feet we need to walk firmly and to draw our imagination's designs upon life's beautiful but always shifting ground. The second poem, which on page 21, if you happen to have a book, and I hope lots more will happen to have it by the end of the evening, but product, very cheap product. 50 poems, $10. Can't beat it. So I facilitated a poetry group for the Young Society of Victoria for 15 years, nearly 15 years anyway. And we did a lot of interesting things in that group, but one of them was to do poetic exercises and to do imitation exercises. And this poem is a imitation or inspired by a Sharon Knowles poem called I Go Back to May 1917 and 1937, I beg your pardon. And it's based on Sharon's poem. She imagines herself as her parents are meeting for the first time and what she would say to them. So she imagines herself talking to them. And I just love that poem. So I tried to write my own version of it. And it's called Going Back. I go back to 1936. I visit my mother-to-be, Kitty. She's single, a night nurse at Arclid Hospital, the place for nutters, as Cheshire people call them. Billy Bullock, rotund, cheerful, and orderly there, comes into her office. He says, I have this brother. He's a skilled tradesman, Harry's his name, lives with his son in Green Street. Wife died of cancer a while back. He's a gentleman, doesn't expect too much. Everyone loves his son William, who's training to be an architect. You're two lonely people. How about it? Before she can reply, I want to step in, turn to Uncle Billy and say, you don't know what you're getting your brother into. He may hope for a peaceful life, but this woman will want anything but that. She'll want to return to the class her parents lived in, her sisters married into. When he stays working class, she'll badger me, her son, to achieve all the things she dreams of. No one will get any rest. Then I want to turn to Kitty and say, don't listen to Billy, there's a war coming. Popular outgoing William will die in the RAF. You want children and a loving husband. Instead, you'll have miscarriages and a husband heartbroken by the death of his first wife, never recovering from the death of his son. Eventually, you will have a son, but he will do a long disappearing dance, further and further away from you. Nothing will happen as you've planned. But I let Billy talk. I don't know Kitty's life. I don't know how it feels to look after children with encephalitic heads, to look after an old woman whose angry hands pick at her housecoat all day, then go home to make tea for ungrateful bedridden parents who prefer your sisters to you. I haven't been at home with my father either. Don't know what it's like to be married and widowed, coming back to a bachelor room after the pub, popular son out with his friends. So I swallow my lecturing words and instead turn to Harry and Kitty, say, what am I to know what were better choices? Besides, I want to come along, to be scared into writing by the spaces between you. And third poem, final poem, it's also set in the Utah desert. It's on page 63, for those of you who have the book. And I'm sure many of you know the artwork of Georgia O'Keeffe and the very sensuous flower paintings mentioned in the poem. And slot canyons, also mentioned in the poems, are canyons so narrow that it's usually impossible to turn around in them. So there's only one way to go, which is forward. They're usually at ground level, but not always. So this is called Entering the Painting, Peekaboo Canyon. And Peekaboo Canyon is the slot canyon in Utah. No going down to a narrow space. Instead, a 12-foot ascent to start a slot canyon way above the ground. We're pilgrims climbing to a hilltop church, ascending the steps to a cathedral replete with arches and flying buttresses. But these arches are oval, vagina-shaped. We're entering a Georgia O'Keeffe painting with constant shifts of colors, red, mauve, orange, yellow, and colors not yet named. Once we've slithered up that impossible 12 feet, there's no going back, like the no going back after birth or rebirth. each turn obscuring what's behind us. No firm ground on which to stand, born into the mind of the artist, head full of colours, but not knowing what painting, if any, the next turn in the path will bring. So, thank you. And buy the book.
Thank you very much. One more time for Chris Bullock, please. And even though there is a saying, at least where I come from, that applause is the bread of the artist, as he said, if you buy his book, you can buy even more bread, right? Now we come to our featured reader, DC Reid, who has been patiently sitting there all the time. DC Reid has published, in my bio here, it says 17 books. I let him look over. It says, no, I think that's more now, right? That's more. Okay. So many books he has published already, including at least 9 collections of poetry, at least 1 novel, at least 2 works of literary nonfiction, and 5 books on fly fishing. Is that still up to date? 6 books on fly fishing. Okay. And one of the books, for example, A Man and His River, a 25-year love affair with a wild island waterway, recently won the gold medal for books from the Professional Outdoor Writers Association. But that's not the book that's on the table. That one is Poems Selected and New, which has just been released with Ekstasis Editions and draws from work of his previous 8 books. And as I said before, DC Reid is selling that one tonight as a special offer for only 20 bucks. That's certainly less than $1 for a line. So DC Reid, please come up and read to us from that book.
And after telling David Day that I had $0, I opened my wallet and found a bunch of 20s. All in 1 5. So that would make it work. Oh, okay.
Right.
Is that okay?
Think of it.
I have a tendency to move away from mics.
Okay.
So if I'm not loud enough, tell me.
Okay.
Now, before I start reading, my next book 18, I'm going to pass this around. This is the introduction to me in that book. But the reason I'm passing it around is why we'll understand why horses are the bane of my life, right? You can read this, pass it around and read it as you want. It's the horse story that's the important part. Now this I've shown to a couple of people. This is a cougar head rock. It's a natural formation. It's 8 feet across. It's in the E River on the north end of Vancouver Island, about a click and a half above the confluence with the Allen. And I'll pass this around too. This is a natural formation. It's 8 feet across. And I was just simply blown away that it could be a natural thing. Right. Yeah. Yeah, isn't that amazing? It's hard to believe that it's totally natural, right? Okay, yes, this is a collection of my first 9 books. That will be in my 10th book, which is a book of translations into Chinese. And I'm going to go right back to my first book and read a poem about my mother, who passed some years ago. But this was something that was important to her, just to stand there and look. And it's called Tess Looking Through Monet. The old white gnome Monet stands with his invisible pond, brush full of lily pad and blue. Tess would like to touch his world because she'll be here this once, and the water's inviting so few feet away. Across the velvet rope, Tess is thirsty for art. She is the grandmother who leans to his delicate art, the light that flows down his neck, his chest. Tess looks through the transparency Monet painted to all his life, through his many-layered air to water lilies glowing in the deep. Precise pink petals are rising to touch her with blooming. Monet stands rumpled and homespun, having painted what is and isn't there, having moved across and then returned with the light that grows inside the air. He smiles up at Tess, who from this little here perceives the mystery in his pond, the water lily in her hand. Oh, this one is one that has great sadness in it for me because it happened while I was getting divorced. Now this is some years ago now, but this is called Paper Heart. It's about my daughter. Head at my rib, handing across her paper heart, pink, to glue a family together. 8 years old, a collection of 200 pliable bones, small metacarpals pressed to the back of my hand. Divorce is bone dust in ribs of sun from Venetian blinds laid across her bright eye. Wind and agony are invisible. The dissection of a marriage, the spurt of disjecta membra. A butcher knife would be a blessing, blood in gutters, carcasses hung like weird dolls. Behind doors, food in its freshness rots. Vanessa's bright, fragile skull with its net of veins. The inverted retina of an eagle sees far but does not cry. Lucky bird. March 26, 1994. Ordinary, lethal with shame. Her paper heart strips off, and I press it back, hopeless. Weep uselessly against the fridge. Pour orange juice on the floor. As I said, that was a sad thing. Right. Right. Then the further day, this you'll see a change in style in this. I moved to a much more tangential style than a narrative line, one thing to another to another. And I'll mention it in this one. I do three completely unrelated, somewhat unrelated lines, starting with as if, and give it a try sometime. You'll be surprised what you come up with. This is called Then the Further Day. Oh, and the quote, she saw the Queen of Heaven once and kept the vision in her soul. No one believed what she had heard, seen. No one believed what she heard. That's the song of Bernadette. And it was actually written more by Jennifer Warren than it was Leonard Cohen. The two of them did write it, that's true. But if you look it up, you'll find that Jennifer Warren is more credited with that. Now, the other quote is called Myth is History We Need, which I think is a very bright thought. And that was by Jan Zwicky. So here's the technique. As if the white wasps in their paper casings were symbols of wisdom, and so a promise I could trust. As if the rain falling fitfully on the house-rounded shore were selflessness, and giving in to destiny were admirable completely. As if the land was not to be heard at night, pouring winter through itself to Gonzales Bay. Mornings of white light, my paler self walks the water untethered. And even before me, Spanish captains with black between their teeth, squiring names, San Juan, Esperanza, Escalante, they could not escape through the residue of memory. In its time, when it is ready, the ocean turns and sings the calcium from bone until it is no more. Come on, let me hold you. Won't you let me hold you like Bernadette would do? Which is such a lovely song. Oh, the next one is called The Day Diana Died, and it occurred in a hotel across the water in the States. And we had gone across in my boat 60 miles in fog, and I didn't realize that we were passing behind freighters, and we could have passed right in the middle of them. I had no idea. until I thought about it afterwards. So this is called The Day That Diana Died. To reinvent from across the room that we have purchased for now in my underpants. My own way to write exact as fingerprints, having left the bed to smoke and pen a spurt of nothing on a napkin. In ribs of sun on the other side, an island of thigh and wetness render a woman, and before our bodies together like starfish. We have faced our death today, the disappeared morning 60 miles through unseen freighters and duplicity of fog. For us, the thin sweat of spiders and blazing hands upon the helm. The steps we take to freedom are small and matter only to ourselves, the warm bodies with whom we close our eyes. Lush, half mad, the scent of us descends with us from the long sun for a ritzy sort of dinner, food upon our forks, and in the news that in our love a princess died. The punctured heart jumps on its ribs, and you say, "This is happening." How like foxes, the jackals with delicate whiskers curved and lacquered red. She has her foot beside her ear, her white eyes as stars jerk for her this last time across a blue summer evening. All right then, responsibility. The poet passes to a faraway country close by, while my tongue descends on her vein like a blind arm, while I look in the mirror until my face doesn't make sense anymore, the sound forks make on china, the sun exploding in a wine glass, the legs of shattered Cambodian children. Okay. Let's have a little bit of orange. That was quite an event for us when that happened. It really was hard to believe, and it was very hard to come down and on the news hear that Diana had died. It was such an odd combination of things. Okay. Right. A hunger. Right. Right. This is about a time that I took Patrick Lane out fishing with me. He was on my case to take him out because he knew I'd catch a lot of fish, right? And so I finally had to take him out. And of course, here I am out there with, to my mind, the best boat in the country. And I'm not catching fish, right? And I'm going, oh no, this is terrible, right? And it took me almost 4 hours to find the fish, but in the end, we did find them. And this is called the hunger for fish. Is there a benign mythology of color that accounts for all this ice? Take that blue boat in the blue distance where the sea and sky become each other. I'm in that boat, and I'm not blue. Our talk for now, I've written two of us, is of the coyote spoon and its green glow eye, the clover leaf, mint tulip, the hoochie let down. Seamlessly, the sea turns landscape on a journey to nowhere distinct. It pulls us through the back of ourselves in the race, in a roundness at ease with the moon. Our talk, when it comes again, is of the lost poem, the raven who flew straight for the curve of the earth, the Pacific, and could not be reconciled. It was a water too far. Of the disease of creativity, the cheery probability 1 in 5 poets will kill themselves. What gives January the right to make skeletons of everything? Graham Greene, for instance, burning for roulette. He pulled the trigger in his ear and quenched a winning with alcohol. Pointless, for desire is liquid too and falls toward the mind, the hand. To what weakness does one lean willingly? A white powder rising to the pleasure center of the brain is poetry. And before that rush, the other rush, when blood worms in the pit, saying, I love you. Why, oh why do veiny-eyed cormorants line up like accountants in fatal January? I wipe my thighs, my hands look out at you, ask the question, what does it take for men to be friends? There's a song in the nerves of things. It's lightning in flesh. The club I raise and death snaps along their bodies. Corpses in the fish bucket, blood on the legs of our pants. How islands bathe in the gristling sea, sensual as rounds of winter skin. On the rocks, Jurassic, yellow circled eyes. Cormorants snout the air for death and shiver in their shabby hunger. Idling back to Pedder Bay, the boat chooses its path. A horse reins upon its withers, haunches shifting like women. The harbor rips open like the bones of pregnant animals. Again, there is the flesh-starved heron frozen into the shoreline, the wild, pathetic beauty we are all in. What have I forgotten? Be at peace, white heart. Go easy, blood upon your knees. Right. So that was the end of. We actually caught 4 fish at the end there. So, you know, I would have been, really out to lunch, right? And now to change the subject quite a bit from having to impress the best boat in the country. I've loved poem, and perhaps it's the first one. That's why I called it perhaps the first love poem. No great feat to flick a switch. A lifted finger in the sudden ambery porch materializes the lesser beings. In the afterness of sex, I willingly release a sigh. Deborah charts its shirt to a gauzy pattern. Her lips aboriginal, untamable as summer. Pin she plucks from a plush red strawberry. Maybe Eve didn't like her fruit, a ripe brown fig like a misplaced scrotum in the licheny branches of an apple tree. Maybe this snake had a hard time convincing her to put it in her mouth, and she, no dummy, had Adam taste a part of himself he never before could reach. So perhaps it's fruit in my simple hand, perhaps it's pain. I smell sweet, seedy genitals across the thin skin of centuries, 35 chemicals it takes to plumpen up an apple. Or say in my evening chair, about to turn the light like some indulgent imminence, I will recall the delicate toes of elk, stepping among the remnant snows, indifferent as beauty is to itself. Or Napoleon, in his foolish suede boots retreating from January, the mane of his horse, the way it casually fractured the air. Every bit as doomed as the soft-winged insects flying resolutely out of nothing. I can do no more than point and say, there goes something dead. Then the smoke lifts from ruined lives. She has spent her whole life walking toward this orange home. She holds herself among the morning crates, the dried bananas like shrunken heads along the counter. Simple. The meaningless desires with which we fill up our days. The night, too much of everything, which returns me to the pulpy early nectarines, to the question of sex and love, the secret language of our isolated beds of now. The dusky peaks of her pelvic crowns my hand can reach across. I hold her out like a bolt of living cloth, 2 wrists bound by my right hand, 2 ankles in my left, and marvel at the rounded female generosity of her flowered blue panties, intuition where we join in gift, which leads me to God. The Bible is written by layers and layers of men who first held up their religion to the scrutiny of themselves, their belief in the very sexual mushroom. And there's a certain amount of horror as I grow nimble and fleet of foot, to rephrase the older poet, and shoulder down his long straight road. And if longing was being stuck, what then ambivalence? What then if God was one of us? Right, there's a line in this poem that I really like, which you'll get. You actually get it twice, right? This is called For Women Who Graze the Melting Fire. I need some water here. Okay, the quotes are: loyalty to the past is for those who run swords through their heads. And that's anonymous, which probably means that I wrote it. The hand with all its ageless grace is stupid in winter. The tadpole press turns its stomach from its mouth. That's by D.C. Reid. Couldn't you guess? I'm thinking of the Sistine Chapel and the long, slow drip of pigment to Morrison and Hendricks, Davis and Cobain. Michelangelo on his back with his palette of 9, 6 floors above the floor. I paint the dip net swale the fermented shore and bite the skin off my arm. Snowflakes touch the water like spiders play pianos. The derelict tractor speaks its absence of people to High Oaks Valley, mud rolled around its wheels. Its fenestrated seat snow with great patience fills. There are harrows beneath the rounded fields, and beneath them fingerprints to be combed into the dirt. Auburn hair across a forehead, what is left after longing has left its boot holes in the shore. Deb's ankle I hold like Clapton, 3 years since my red-haired child took the tadpoles away. Do not be afraid to tell a story with a different ending. In between her breasts of a girl, the black belly that is a lake in its spare time. How it can pass in and out of existence as though this were easy, as though death changes nothing. I tell myself I've walked into the open room of the mind, the one where women graze the melting fire. Sun through the screened windows and battering that is insect on the other side of our eyelids, soft and futile. En route to Winnipeg, I melt a gun in my hand, and from the high cross of an airplane, cast lakes across the land. That's why it was the melting fire. Okay, here's a nice simple poem that has a nice last line. I'll tell you when the last line's been read. It's called Mule Deer. 2 deer and maybe more resting in the rain of the yard. They have left the wild for people and rain that craters the urban faith. At their edges, the small work of us goes on. Rain is a cleansing as it is meant to be, and the voluminous apples spill harmlessly to a turf so servile it lets itself be halved by the small blades of man. Mouths that break the stalks don't leave anything at all. Small brown worlds are sown among the legs and flower fields. In this epistolary frame of nature is man's grappling what cannot be held. The ponding grass, the deer, the rain that falls where souls need washing away. We are the non-corporeal turned to the unhuman. The deer and wildness come to save us. Water is time, and the earth changes. And I've actually written a poem about Canada. And I put all sorts of Canadian things in it too, as you'd expect. Okay, this is called Canada. Oh, and I actually won a prize for this somewhere along the line. Maybe it's because it has all sorts of Canadian things in it. I don't know. We are the land, and so we come to each other from far away. The eastern slope has maple leaves, the crash of wave on newfound land. Oh, maze of me, what does speaking in foreign tongues mean? Pretending to be a people in the largest country never fought in and for itself, never a pogrom nor a gulag. But our reservation comprises death untraceable for those found here by the harpers of the nation, the Bordens, the Mulrooney's, the chief with his jowly nation of Saskatoon, that sweet prairie fruit that stained my hands from their picking on the cliff where falcons stooped to knock me off. The falcons called me twice each time they spoke, echo booming a place of rumpled green. I fancied only I could hear their calling in Alberta mountains with flakes round their feet, the Yamnuskas, Gananaskas. I hear the names Sarcee, Ponoka, the Trudeaus, and Stanfield, bagpipes, their instrument of colonialism, in France, where our grandparents died of the opening up of mustard gas. We know of it in our placid land, it's how to make the water pure. Oh, my distant friends, we have no other words than what our mouths form on tongues. Those with teeth say Sartlet, Mashalet, Tawasin. Lakes are our only precious thing, the open eyes of our country. Lake Winnipeg, that flatness with curling wave in the middle of us, the Ukrainian, the Mennonite people with olden clothes, olden carts and way to olden towns, anywhere on our CP grid flatness. Then Banff Springs, Hell's Gate, Fraser and Thompson. Our flesh that drains through itself of tears to a western shore, where trails between cedars last long enough to see the tops of green millennia. It is the drum we know, the way we cannot keep our feet within our shoes. Not Huckleberry, not Tom, nor Brodigan, but Canadian. I sing the land relentless. We search for the native drum that is this Canada. We start so far away, you cannot hear us coming. And I thought I would add, I sing the land relentless, if that sounds familiar, it's a takeoff in a line by Walt Whitman. And his line is, I sing the body electric, right? It's that line. Okay, and I'm coming to my last poem. Now, I really like Vermeer's painting of Vermeer's girl. That's what this is called, right? And the look on her face made me want to write a poem about her. And this is the only other poem where I've used structural idea of starting a sentence with as if. So there's actually two poems in this book, or in my entire life's writing, that start having sentences that go as if. So this is called Nunc Dimittis, and I followed Patrick Lane's version. It's on page 250 in his collected works from Harvard. You can go take a look. It is morning, and I'm kneeling in the garden, and that's what Patrick Lane says. And when he walked me through this, he said, did you get the fact that I'm talking about heaven as well? And then it dawned on me that it had to be. It's morning and I'm kneeling in the garden. You know, such a simple line, but such a great line. As if Forsythia were a yellow pathway through wandering air to the face of the girl in Vermeer's painting, asking why her fine-skinned cheek is afraid. As if the last river gorge of Atlantis were a silver ring with silent blue water. As if Picasso's African women of Avignon could turn to horses and their snorts leave the Austrian Wittgenstein, the German Heidegger, the Husserl, in their endless coming to now. Am I genuflecting in the garden? I don't know. The three griefs I cannot understand. The small Teresa, fingers spread to and away from awakening. A mythical God's insistence on joy. The splinter rose emerging from my faith. Ours is a cold country, and espaliered fruit in southern sun makes it no less cold on the most august day. Can the windmill undo its spiraling? I would like to know. As if green tomatoes come after coal, before the girl's cheek, one who walks green water, or beautiful skin that peels like pages of a white book. Would you, if you could, tell the girl how it would be, that her painter is the residence of her questions, the dry river gorges of Asoyos, of Karamios. I return to the garden and my feet touch not the ground. Green tomatoes rise into my hands, the girl's windmill, hydra blue against blue of windsock, full-cheeked on neck of land. Can a pearl be afraid? Her windmill turns to me and asks whether it may now take its leave. And that's it. In case you didn't know, Nunc Dimittis means taking one's leave or being asked to take one's leave, right? So, and the other thing that you would not have got was that I had 3 things that I covered, and I did that because it's in Patrick's poem. So you can go take a look at his. So, but his a lovely painting, and I got to have it in color in my book. Great, thank you.